What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today, Tuesday, November 29th, 2022. I'm your host, Sean Murphy. And today I want to talk about the storylines facing the Detroit Pistons and everything going on in the state of the world of Detroit basketball because it's been an interesting time. And there's quite frankly a lot to talk about. And at the same time, a lot to desire in the sense of both. I think obviously the basketball product of late has been good. I think that the team, given the circumstances, is playing well as they possibly can. I think the circumstances are just really sucky. So it's interesting because looking at the current situation right now, that the team's currently facing, the number one storyline in the short term and in the long term facing the Detroit Pistons right now is health. Just to name a few, like we currently at one point earlier this week had all five of our opening night starters injured. Sadiq Bey was on the injury report. He was back in the lineup earlier this week. Jaden Ivey was on the injury report with an injury. He might be back in the lineup tonight. Bojan Bogdanovic is on the injury report for a knee injury. He's questionable to come back against the Knicks, apparently. So hopefully Bojan could be back in the lineup somehow, which if he is, then that's crazy to me because his injury looked bad a few days ago. I straight up thought we were going to be hearing that Bojan had some form of tear. And seeing that Bojan Bogdanovic could possibly come back against the Knicks, I'm not quite sure about that. But if he is indeed out for a significant period of time, it's going to be something that, the Pistons are going to need people to step up. And that kind of steps into that other piece of player development. And I know we talk all the time about, guys like Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren and Killian Hayes and kind of like some of those more prominent names. But I think this is like a really interesting time for our guys around the edges. And I think that's kind of the theme of what this year is going to have to be all about. I think we know like that nucleus. So at the very least, we're going to be building this around Cade Cunningham, right? Like, we know that he's a stud. Whenever he comes back, he's going to be perfectly fine. We know from what we've seen so far with Jaden Ivey, he's going to be a damn good player. Or at the very least, he's going to be an explosive athlete in this league. We know that Killian Hayes, we know that like there's a certain floor to what he's going to be. We know that Jalen Duren's pretty awesome. We know Isaiah Stewart, what he can do when he's on the court. But we don't know a whole lot about what's around the edges. We don't know like what some people can do when they're in elevated spots. And so I'm interested in particular. I think two people that can really shine and make the most out of these opportunities, and two players that have done that so far are Isaiah Livers and Kevin Knox. Let's talk Kevin Knox for a second, man, because Kevin Knox has been fascinating as hell. I mean, this guy, we talk about, like writing off players in this league. We talk, in making judgments about what their careers are going to be, what these players are, who these guys are as people. He's 23 years old. Like I'm 25. This guy is only in his fourth season, and he was showing over the stretch this last week that he can take a confident jump shot. If he's in rhythm, he can take a confident jump shot. In addition, his athleticism, his potential on the defensive end, when he plays with high effort, which seems like almost every time he's been getting minutes of late, he's a fun player. And when you talk about like the type of reclamation project that he is, it's a perfect sign because you bring him in on a 2-year, $6 million contract, a team option on the second year, and it's really just a flyer. Go out and see what he can do. And it didn't seem like he was going to get much playing time this season, obviously, when guys were in the lineup, but things change. And especially when you start out your season at 5-17, you're going to be able to go out and have more minutes. You're going to have a longer rope. You're going to have an opportunity to go out and play. And I think this is interesting because, we look at like what the team said at the beginning of the season and what they said like at media day. And, we focused a lot on the word compete. And maybe even some of us were overly zealous of like what that could mean this season. But it's about learning how to compete, and it's learning how to take those steps. And obviously you can do that with, your stars playing really well, but you also need those guys around the edges to play really good basketball too. And with that, we talk about Kevin Knox, but Isaiah Livers, man, his consistency on the defensive end, his jump shot, which, he's a career 40+% 3-point shooter at every level he's been at. I think in the NBA, I know this year he hasn't been the greatest shooting from beyond the arc, but I think he's going to be able to ultimately carry that up and get better from that position. His defensive prowess, but also just his intensity that he plays with as well. I'm excited to see, if Bojan is indeed going to be missing some time, like if he does get that chance to shine in those minutes, I think that could be a great opportunity for him. And I think, he's just one of those guys that has a lot of potential to have a spot in this league for quite a while. It's just going to be able to depend on, for one, if he can get that jump shot consistency, two, if he can continue to be a hawk on the defensive end, but then also if he can continue to take those next steps, put the ball on the court, become a playmaker, do those things on the offensive end beyond just being a catch and shoot guy. Obviously, if he is a catch and shoot guy and he's lethal from there, that's okay too. Because 3-and-D guys in this league, that's gold. That's exactly what you need, especially at the wing position. I think another guy as well, Hamidou Diallo. I think we've seen consistent stretches of him playing good basketball. I think, him being able to have this consistent opportunity this season, be able to go out there and prove what he's going to be able to do, especially like at the beginning of the year when he was told that he was being more so looked at as like a veteran on the team, a guy that can go out there and help the other guys. Now he can kind of more so go out there and help himself. He can kind of go out and more so like play with those guys too. So I think that's a good opportunity for him. I want to see him continue to develop, obviously, on his offensive game. Well, I want to see that consistent defensive effort because I think Amadou is one of those guys that can change a game with his defense, especially him and Killian. I think if those guys continue to like play with a lot of effort and a lot of intensity on that end, it's fun to watch, Kevin Knox and Hamidou Diallo on the court together because when you can have those two types of athletes, on the court with each other, and those guys can be out in the fast break, the type of weapon that we haven't had. Throw that out there with Jaden Ivey. That's fireworks, man. And like really, that's the thing. Is once I think we get some more guys back in this lineup, I really do think you're going to start seeing some fireworks. One thing that's interesting, according to James Edwards III, ever since Alec Burks has entered the Pistons lineup, the Pistons have not lost a game by double digits. So we talk about all this time, like, about the value that Marvin Bagley and Alec Burks were going to bring, what they were going to do for this lineup. It's a lot. The answer's a lot. I've been really impressed with Alec Burks. And, I think we've seen he's a consistent 3-point shooter. He's a consistent scorer. He's kind of like a Bojan light, where Bojan can go out there and just get you buckets literally at all times. Whereas Alec Burks is the type of guy where, obviously he can score. And he can score at will, but he can't really create for himself as much as Bojan can. Bojan's a guy that can blow by defenders. He's a guy that can, catch and shoot from three. He's a guy that can do step backs. He's a guy that can literally score from any area of the court. And Alec Burks, he can get to his spots. He's a professional scorer too, but he's not quite as he doesn't have as quite of a wide arsenal as he does. But it's interesting, it looks like Isaiah Stewart is being listed as questionable as well going forward. So if the Pistons can indeed get Isaiah Stewart back in the lineup, Bojan Bogdanovic back in the lineup, Jaden Ivey back in the lineup, the Pistons can start getting healthy soon with guys back, all but Cade. I think you could start seeing a more competitive team, especially with the fact that considering all these guys have been out, all these injuries have taken place, and yet they've still been as competitive as they've been on the Western Coast trip against some of these playoff teams. We almost won against the Cavaliers the other night at home. We have opportunities to get some wins and to start racking them up here pretty soon. And I think ultimately that's going to be the interesting thing is when can guys start coming back in the lineup, and when they do, what kind of effect can they have? Can Isaiah Stewart get back to having that type of effect that he did at the beginning of the season, because he was playing great. And if he does, can we start seeing more of those two big lineups? Because that was something that we wanted to experiment with. It was something we started to see experimentation with. And then once we started seeing it, that was the night that Isaiah Stewart had the injury, man. Just brutal. Absolutely brutal. But now I feel like with guys actually coming back in the lineup, knock on wood, players can start to get some chemistry together. We can start getting even more competitive, start racking up some more wins. See Jaden Ivey get back on this Rookie of the Year campaign, even though Paulo Banchero looks pretty incredible. And I think he's probably going to still ultimately win it because he's Paulo and he's a bucket. But I think at the same time, there's still a lot of reasons to be excited about Pistons basketball. And I think for the long term, it's going to be interesting to see what do the Pistons do at the trade deadline. What did the Pistons decide as far as like, do they actually make moves? Are they going to sell? Are they going to buy? Are they going to put themselves in a position, have even more cap space? Or could they possibly go out and get even more, draft capital? There's a lot of things to be looking out for in the coming weeks, in the coming months. And it's going to be interesting to see how this team evolves both on and off the court. But with that, what do you think? What do you want to see from the Pistons over the coming weeks? Let us know in the comment section down below. But also, be sure you're liking this video, subscribe to the channel, and staying tuned in for more from Half Court content. But with that, folks, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you subscribe.